Kicking things off like we're diving straight back into a story already in motion, imagine the moment when the chaos of the McAllister family surges forward once again. Only this time, the slip-up that sends young Kevin off on his own doesn't toss him into the quiet suburbs, but hurls him straight into the electric heartbeat of New York City. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York isn't just a sequel, it's a wild escalation, a louder drumbeat, a bigger playground, and a whole new set of dangers and opportunities wrapped in the glow of Christmas lights. The movie spins its tale around Kevin McAllister, the kid with more wit than most adults and enough nerve to take on the world, accidentally boarding the wrong flight during a hectic holiday airport sprint and landing not in sunny Florida with his family, but smack dab in Manhattan. What unfolds next is this crazy, exciting roller coaster of a storyline where Kevin, armed with his dad's credit card, roams the city like it's his personal theme park, checking into the luxurious Plaza Hotel, exploring the sights, soaking in the magic, and feeling that intoxicating rush of independence that only an adventurous kid in a massive city could feel. But freedom always comes with a twist, and the twist here is the return of the Wet Bandits, Harry and Marv, now reinvented as the Sticky Bandits, desperate, determined, and dumber than ever. Kevin bumps into them by pure fate, and suddenly this fun New York getaway becomes a full-blown battle of wits again. Only this time, the stakes feel bigger, the traps feel crazier, and the backdrop of the city gives everything an almost mythic energy. As Kevin realizes these two crooks are planning to rob a children's toy store on Christmas Eve, stealing money intended for charity no less, he flips from tourist mode into full tactical mastermind. He transforms his uncle's abandoned half-renovated New York townhouse into a personal booby-trap war zone, complete with flying bricks, explosive paint cans, collapsing floors, electrifying surprises, and every twisted genius invention that only Kevin could dream up. At the same time, the movie digs into the emotional layers, too, like when Kevin befriends the pigeon lady in Central Park. This mysterious, gentle character who teaches him about trust, second chances, and kindness in a world that often leaves people behind. Their bond becomes one of the film's emotional anchors, reminding us that even in a city of millions, connection still matters. Meanwhile, his family is racing across states to find him, driven by guilt, panic, and that messy yet powerful force called love. And all the while, the city becomes Kevin's playground and battlefield, skating through car horns and skyscrapers, sprinting from the Sticky Bandits, tossing jokes and insults like grenades, and using every ounce of his cleverness to protect a toy store full of donations and outsmart the criminals yet again. What makes Home Alone 2 so gripping is that blend of adventure, heart, comedy, and danger, all happening in one of the loudest, wildest cities on Earth during the most magical time of year. It's about a kid who refuses to be scared, who stands up to bad guys twice his size, who turns a city into a strategy map, and who somehow manages to rediscover what family and Christmas really mean, even while navigating luxury hotels, dark alleys, and towering Christmas trees. And as the film barrels toward its finale, with Kevin outrunning, outsmarting, and out-trapping Harry and Marv once again, the toy store saved, the crooks caught, the family reunited, you can't help but lean in, waiting for the next twist, the next laugh, the next trap, the next moment, where Kevin proves that being small doesn't mean being powerless. It's an energetic, heartwarming, chaotic holiday adventure that somehow feels bigger every time you hear the story, like the city itself is a character cheering Kevin on. And just like that, the tale keeps pulling you forward, making you want to stick around, waiting for what's coming next, as if the magic of Christmas in New York is whispering that the adventure isn't over yet. Rolling right from that whirlwind journey through the streets of Manhattan, the tale sharpens its focus on the faces, the personalities, the living heartbeat of Home Alone 2, lost in New York, because the magic of this story doesn't just come from the traps or the city skyline, it comes from the people who fill the screen with chaos, humor, danger, and heart. And right at the center, like a spark plug igniting the whole machine, stands Kevin McAllister, played once again by the unstoppable Macaulay Culkin, whose mix of mischief, innocence, and razor-sharp thinking turns this lost-in-the-city adventure into something legendary. He carries the movie with that wide-eyed confidence, that kid-next-door charm that somehow convinces you he really could take on two grown criminals with nothing but rope, bricks, and a hotel reservation. But Kevin's story wouldn't be the thrill ride it is without the iconic return of Harry and Marv, those two walking disaster zones brought to life by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern. And let me tell you, these two don't just act, they embody chaos. Pesci's grouchy, furious Harry feels like a ticking time bomb ready to explode every time Kevin outsmarts him. And Stern's Marv, with his clueless enthusiasm and over-the-top reactions, delivers some of the funniest moments in the entire film. Whether he's getting electrocuted into a glowing skeleton or trying to keep his dignity while walking around with duct tape stuck to his hand. The movie also brings back the McAllister family in all their frantic, dysfunctional holiday glory, with Catherine O'Hara as Kate McAllister pouring raw emotion and panic into her performance as the mother who once again finds herself desperately tracking down her missing son, while John Hurd returns as Peter McAllister, grounding the family with that calm, practical energy amid the chaos. And then comes one of the most unforgettable souls in the whole movie, the Pigeon Lady, played by Brenda Fricker, who doesn't just wander into Kevin's story. She becomes the emotional anchor of the entire New York chapter, a quiet, gentle spirit who teaches Kevin about trust, compassion, and the beautiful chance to start again when life breaks you down. On the brighter, more comedic side of things, you've got Tim Curry as the Plaza Hotel's wonderfully snobbish concierge, gliding through scenes with this sly grin that screams, "Something's not right here," constantly scheming to expose Kevin while also fearing him just a little too much once Kevin gets the upper hand. Alongside him is Rob Schneider as the bellhop with a tip obsession, bouncing between fear and annoyance as Kevin continues to outplay the entire hotel staff. And you can't forget Dana Ivey as the stern desk clerk, adding that classic upscale hotel attitude that makes Kevin's infiltration of the plaza even more hilarious. Let's not overlook the toy store owner either, Mr. Duncan, played with warm, tender charm by Eddie Bracken, who becomes the quiet soul of Christmas spirit in the movie, unknowingly inspiring Kevin to protect the store's charity money from the sticky bandits' greedy hands. Every one of these actors, every personality they bring to the screen, pushes the story forward with a kind of explosive energy that makes the world of Home Alone 2 feel bigger, louder, funnier, and more heartfelt than ever. When you watch the movie knowing who's behind each character, you start to feel the rhythm of it. The way Kevin's sharp energy bounces off Harry's rage. The way Marv's buffoonery exaggerates every disaster. The way the McAllisters' frantic love adds warmth to the chase. The way the pigeon lady softens the story with quiet wisdom. The way the hotel staff injects humor straight into Kevin's high-end mischief. Put all these performances together, and suddenly the adventure becomes more than just traps and laughs. It becomes a living, breathing holiday saga fueled by personalities that crash, collide, and spark like fireworks over the New York skyline, pulling the viewer deeper and deeper into this unforgettable Christmas storm where every character, hero, villain, friend, or fool has a part in building the magic that keeps us hooked, leaning in, waiting for every next moment as if the story itself refuses to let us go. Sliding right from the energy of those unforgettable characters, the heart of Home Alone 2. Lost in New York opens up like this deeper layer hiding under all the comedy and chaos. And once you start peeling it back, you realize the movie isn't just about a kid running wild in Manhattan or dropping bricks on two crooks' heads. It's carrying a collection of themes and moral lessons that sneak up on you and hit harder than you expect. At the center of it all is this powerful idea of independence, the thrill of growing up. That moment every kid secretly dreams about when they imagine being in charge of their own life, making their own choices, doing whatever they want without anyone telling them no. Kevin gets that fantasy handed to him on a silver platter, but the story slowly reveals that independence isn't just freedom. It's responsibility, conscience, and the courage to stand up and do what's right, even when no one's watching. Like when Kevin realizes he can't just enjoy the city while Harry and Marv get ready to ruin Christmas for a whole lot of kids. And woven into that is the theme of family, not in a sugar-coated, picture-perfect holiday postcard way, but in the messy, loud, frustrating, deeply human way the McAllisters embody. Kevin may get fed up with them, he may feel overlooked or misunderstood, but the story shows that even with all the chaos and arguments, family is the anchor that pulls you back. The thing that feels empty when it's gone, the thing that makes Christmas feel like Christmas. You see this come alive in the moment when Kevin admits to the pigeon lady that he sometimes wishes his family would disappear. And then he confesses how terrifying it is when that wish seems to come true, teaching him and the audience that love comes with flaws, but it's worth fighting for. Speaking of the pigeon lady, her entire character brings in one of the strongest themes of the movie: compassion and second chances. She's the reminder that you never know someone's story just by looking at them, that people who seem forgotten or invisible still carry whole worlds of hope and heartbreak inside them. Through her, Kevin learns about forgiveness, not just forgiving others, but forgiving yourself, letting go of past mistakes and opening your heart again even when the world has hurt you. That message lands heavy, especially in a city as big and fast as New York, where people pass each other like ghosts, and the film pauses just long enough to whisper that kindness still matters, that the smallest gesture can pull someone back into the light. Another major theme rolling through the movie is generosity, the true spirit of giving. And it hits especially hard when Kevin sees the toy store's charity money and realizes the difference it could make for kids who have less than he does. It's that spark that pushes him to take on the Sticky Bandits, not just for revenge or fun, but because protecting those donations means protecting joy, protecting innocence, protecting the kind of Christmas he's always been lucky enough to have. And then you've got courage, not the loud superhero kind, but the everyday bravery that shows up when Kevin walks alone through Central Park at night, when he chooses to help strangers, when he risks himself to stop two grown criminals because he knows it's the right thing to do. Layered over all of this is the movie's message about consequences, showing that every action, every trap, every decision, every choice echoes outward. Kevin learns that adventure is fun, but it comes with danger, responsibility, and sometimes a real price. Finally, at the core of everything beats the deeper message that Christmas isn't about gifts or vacations or perfect plans. It's about connection, generosity, forgiveness, laughter, healing, and the messy, beautiful chaos of people who love each other even when they don't always get it right. Home Alone 2 wraps all of that up in this wild, hilarious, loud, heartfelt package, slipping its wisdom in between the pranks and punches so smoothly you barely notice until suddenly you're feeling it right there, under the humor, under the action, and it pulls you in even tighter, making you want to keep listening, keep watching, keep traveling alongside Kevin as every lesson becomes part of the adventure that shapes him step by step into someone stronger, kinder, braver, and wiser than he was the day before. And flowing straight out of those themes, like they naturally crack open the next layer of this story, the way the relationships shift and reshape throughout Home Alone 2, Lost in New York becomes this wild emotional ride underneath all the laughs and explosions, almost like the movie is quietly whispering, "Watch closely. These people aren't going to end this story the same way they started it." Kevin's relationship with his family, especially his mom, starts off tense and frayed, full of those little resentments and annoyances that build up during the holidays when everyone's packed together like a ticking time bomb. You feel Kevin's frustration, that desperate wish to be heard and understood, but the moment he gets separated again, this time in a city so gigantic it makes Chicago look like a backyard, the distance starts working on him, softening him, reminding him how empty life feels without the people who drive you crazy but love you anyway. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, his mom doesn't just panic. She transforms into this force of nature, barreling through airports and cities with nothing but determination, guilt, and love fueling her, and that bond between mother and son grows stronger because they fight their way back to each other, not by accident, but by sheer heart. Then there's the dynamic with Harry and Marv, which evolves into something even funnier and wilder than in the first film. They start off thinking they've hit the jackpot bumping into Kevin again, but slowly that confidence crumbles as Kevin steps back into the role of strategic mastermind, turning their reunion into a full-blown war. Their relationship shifts from simple cat and mouse to this unspoken, almost mythical rivalry. Kevin becomes their nightmare, and they become his challenge. This chaotic dance where every trap, every near miss, every mad chase scene deepens their twisted connection. Another relationship that quietly becomes the soul of the movie is Kevin's bond with the pigeon lady. They start as strangers, and Kevin is honestly terrified at first, like any kid alone in a huge park at night would be. But as they talk, you watch this wall crumble, not just between them, but inside Kevin himself. She teaches him patience and empathy. He gives her trust and kindness, and their friendship evolves into this beautiful, fragile connection that feels bigger than the movie, almost like Kevin steps into an adult world of understanding for the first time. And on the opposite end of the emotional spectrum sits Kevin's interactions with the Plaza Hotel staff, which start playful and sneaky and evolve into this running battle of wits. At first, Kevin uses charm and innocence to fool them, then confidence to outrun them, and eventually full-on trickery to dominate them, which flips their attitude from suspicion to fear to total respect by the time he escapes their reach. Even with Mr. Duncan, the toy store owner, the relationship shifts from a simple customer moment to something warm and meaningful, especially when Mr. Duncan unknowingly inspires Kevin to save the store's charity money, turning Kevin into a kind of guardian angel for Christmas spirit. By the end of the movie, every relationship, whether it's built on love, conflict, fear, loyalty, or pure chaos, ends up evolving into something richer, deeper, more connected. Kevin becomes closer to his family because he learns to appreciate them. Harry and Marv come to fear and respect Kevin in that hilarious villain versus kid showdown way. The pigeon lady finds hope again through Kevin's kindness. The hotel staff learns never to underestimate a kid with a credit card. And Kevin walks away from all of it a little braver, a little wiser, carrying pieces of every person he crossed paths with. It's like the movie uses every explosion, every emotional moment, every chase, and every conversation to reshape the bonds between these characters, reminding us that relationships aren't static. They grow, break, heal, collide, and transform, especially when the world throws you into an adventure bigger than anything you could have imagined. And that evolution, that steady shift from frustration to love, fear to trust, rivalry to legendary showdown, is exactly what keeps the story pulsing, pulling you in deeper and deeper, hungry to see what happens next, and how every connection will twist itself into a new shape by the time the snow settles over New York, carrying that momentum straight into the next layer of this story, the character development in Home Alone 2. Lost in New York feels like watching a spark grow into a flame. You can see Kevin shifting, stretching, and stepping into a version of himself that didn't quite exist back in Chicago or even in the first film. And the way the movie handles that evolution is what makes him so ridiculously compelling to watch. Kevin doesn't just repeat his old tricks. He matures through the chaos, almost like New York becomes this giant testing ground where every fear, every regret, every burst of bravery pushes him a little further into who he's supposed to be. Right from the start, you can tell Kevin's grown mentally sharper. He's still mischievous, still quick with a comeback, still ready to outsmart anyone who comes at him. But there's this extra layer now, like he's thinking deeper, feeling deeper, realizing that some of his choices carry weight. His development shows up in big moments, sure, like deciding to protect the toy store from Harry and Marv or running alone through Central Park at night. But it's the smaller moments that really shape him. The way he talks to the pigeon lady with empathy. The way he admits his own mistakes out loud. The way he realizes freedom isn't as magical when there's no one to share it with. Something about Kevin's charm comes from this mix of innocence and intelligence. He's a kid who believes in magic and kindness, but he also plans out traps like a tactical genius. And that combination gives him this unstoppable appeal. He's relatable because he's imperfect. He snaps, he gets annoyed, he wants space from his family, yet he's admirable because he always circles back to doing the right thing, even when it's scary, even when it costs him. What really makes Kevin compelling is that he never stays still. Every challenge pushes him into new emotional territory. When he checks into the Plaza Hotel alone, you see the confidence of a kid who thinks he's got the world handled. When he sees the sticky bandits again, you see the boldness of someone who refuses to let fear run the show. And when he talks to the pigeon lady, you see vulnerability. He lets his guard down, opens up, and admits the truth he tries so hard to hide. That being alone isn't freedom. It's loneliness wearing a disguise. His arc becomes the backbone of the entire film, turning the wild adventure into something meaningful, something that lingers after the credits roll. And while Kevin grows, the people around him shift too. His mom becomes fiercer, more determined, more connected to her son through the fear of losing him again, and that gives Kevin's arc a mirror. Her growth reflects his. Her desperation echoes his loneliness. And their reunion stitches both of them back together in a stronger way than before. Even the villains play a role in shaping Kevin's development. Harry and Marv force him to prove himself again. But this time, the stakes are bigger. The city is larger, and Kevin has to dig deeper into his courage to keep up. What ultimately seals Kevin as such a compelling protagonist is that he's brave in ways adults often aren't. He feels fear, but runs straight through it. He sees danger, but doesn't back down. He recognizes kindness and gives it back. And he believes in the good he can do, even when he's just one kid lost in a massive city. He embodies that childhood sense that anything is possible, mixed with the kind of determination that makes you root for him every second he's on screen. And by the time his journey arcs back to his family, by the time he's faced danger, saved Christmas, formed a bond with a stranger who needed hope, and realized just how much love he has waiting for him, you can feel that he's not the same kid who boarded the wrong plane. He's grown, not into an adult, but into a stronger, braver, kinder version of himself, shaped by the city, forged by the chaos, and lifted by every person he crossed paths with. It's that evolution, that bright beating arc of growth, that makes Kevin McAllister not just a funny kid with traps, but a protagonist you genuinely care about. Someone whose story you want to follow. Someone who makes you think, all right, what's he going to do next? Rolling from Kevin's growth right into the world wrapped around him, the visual style and cinematography of Home Alone. 2, Lost in New York, hit you like this vibrant, oversized holiday postcard that suddenly comes alive and starts running at full speed, pulling you straight into the chaotic heartbeat of Manhattan at Christmas. The whole movie feels like it's dipped in that rich, glowing holiday warmth, gold tones, twinkling lights, snowy streets, but then layered with the sharp, slick vibe of New York's towering skyscrapers and bustling avenues, and the way the camera moves through all of it turns the city into its own character, loud and alive and almost magical, in the way it surrounds Kevin. What makes it so mesmerizing is how the cinematography balances that huge, sweeping scope with tight, punchy close-ups of Kevin's reactions, Harry and Marv's slapstick misery, and the small emotional moments that sneak up on you when the city gets quiet. The Plaza Hotel scenes explode with elegance, polished floors, towering Christmas trees, gold-plated everything, and the movie leans into that luxury with wide, steady shots that make Kevin look like a tiny rebel king ruling over this giant palace he has no business being in. Then suddenly, you're thrown into the gritty, shadow-drenched corners of Central Park at night, where the lighting drops low, the air turns cold, and the cinematography shifts into something more intimate, more vulnerable, reflecting Kevin's loneliness and the pigeon lady's ghost-like presence. And once the third act showdown hits, the whole style shifts again into this high-energy, almost cartoon-like chaos, fast cuts, exaggerated camera angles, wide shots that showcase every booby trap Kevin sets in his uncle's broken-down townhouse. The cinematography leans into the comedy, using timing and framing to make every impact funnier, every fall bigger, every moment of panic on Harry and Marv's faces more unforgettable. Even though it's a live-action film, there's this playful, animated rhythm to the way the physical comedy is shot, almost like the camera is in on the joke, tilting and whipping at just the right second to make each trap feel like a punchline. New York itself becomes a visual playground, snow drifting past neon lights, steam rising from subway grates, the Rockefeller Christmas tree towering like a beacon of holiday magic. The film's visuals make you feel like you're right there with Kevin, absorbing the energy, the noise, the wonder, and the danger of the city all at once. And what really seals the vibe is how the movie switches gears effortlessly. One moment, it feels like a glossy holiday commercial. The next, it feels like a gritty adventure. And then suddenly, it turns into a full-blown physical comedy explosion, all without ever breaking its flow. Everything from the rich Christmas colors to the dynamic camera work to the way the city is framed gives the film its iconic visual flavor, that unmistakable look that makes you think, yep, that's Home Alone 2, even if you're seeing just a single frame. It's big, it's bold, it's festive, it's chaotic, and it wraps the entire story, Kevin's growth, the danger, the magic, the humor, in a visual style that grabs you by the collar and refuses to let you look away, making the world feel alive, electric, and impossible not to get swept up in, and sliding right out of that visual whirlwind into the sound that wraps around it, the music in Home Alone 2. Lost in New York hits with the kind of emotional punch that sneaks under your skin before you even realize what's happening. Because this isn't just background noise, it's a whole heartbeat pulsing beneath the story, guiding your feelings, sharpening the comedy, deepening the warmth, and pulling you straight into Kevin's world. The magic behind it all comes from none other than John Williams, the legendary composer whose music has shaped some of the most iconic moments in film history. And here, he brings that same larger-than-life energy, blending it with twinkling Christmas wonder and playful mischief that feels tailor-made for Kevin McAllister's adventure through New York. What makes the soundtrack so special is the way it dances between moods without ever losing its identity. 1 second, you're hearing these soft, delicate bell-filled melodies that feel like snow drifting past streetlights. And the next, you're thrown into a burst of frantic orchestration that mirrors the chaos of Harry and Marv chasing Kevin through the city. Williams doesn't just score scenes, he scores emotions, using strings, trumpets, chimes, and choirs to paint every moment with feeling. When Kevin explores New York for the first time, the music swells with this wide-eyed excitement, like the city is welcoming him with open arms. When he talks to the pigeon lady in Central Park, everything quiets down into gentle, almost fragile notes that underline the vulnerability of their connection. When he gears up for battle in his uncle's abandoned townhouse, the soundtrack shifts into that signature heroic mischief. This playful, bouncing rhythm that says, "All right, Kevin's about to get serious," while still keeping it fun and lighthearted. And then there's the Christmas spirit baked deep into the score, the soaring choir pieces, the warm harmonies, the nostalgic, almost magical glow that Williams brings into scenes like the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree or the toy store windows. That music doesn't just support the visuals, it amplifies them, makes them feel mythic, like Christmas is practically breathing through the screen. Even the comedic beats are elevated by the score. Harry slipping, Marv screaming, bricks flying through the air. Those moments land harder and funnier because the music snaps and punches right along with the action, turning physical comedy into this perfectly timed symphony of chaos. But the real brilliance is how the music anchors Kevin's emotional arc. Every time he feels lost, small, or overwhelmed, the soundtrack narrows down, becomes gentle and intimate, almost like the music is sitting beside him, reminding him he's not alone. And every time he rises, every time he steps into bravery or kindness or mischief, the score rises with him, lifting him up until you can't help but feel his energy right in your chest. That's the secret weapon of the whole film, the way the music silently guides you through all the twists of the story, letting the city feel bigger, the danger feel sharper, the humor feel louder, and the heart feel warmer. John Williams takes a holiday adventure and transforms it into a full-blown emotional ride simply through the power of sound, making every moment hit a little deeper, shine a little brighter, and stick with you long after the movie's over. And it's that musical heartbeat that ties the entire experience together, making Kevin's journey through New York not just something you watch, but something you feel. Every step, every chase, every trap, every spark of Christmas magic echoing through a score that refuses to let you go, urging you forward, whispering, "There's more. Keep listening. The story isn't done yet." And riding right off that wave of musical brilliance, you can almost feel how the world reacted when Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, hit theaters, because the reception to this movie is its own story, one that's just as wild, just as layered, and honestly just as entertaining as the film itself. What's crazy is that when it first dropped in 1992, critics weren't exactly throwing roses on the stage. A lot of them said it was too similar to the first movie, too over the top, too chaotic, like the traps were dialed up past sane levels and the plot was just a remix of the original. They pointed out the violence, the slapstick insanity, the pure cartoon energy of Harry and Marv getting destroyed in ways that should have put them in a hospital 5 minutes in. Some reviewers felt like the movie was stretching the formula instead of reinventing it. But here's the twist. Audiences didn't care, not even a little. Families packed into theaters, kids laughed their heads off, and the movie made a ridiculous amount of money at the box office. People weren't going to Home Alone 2 for realism or high art. They wanted Kevin versus the Wet Bandits, round 2, but now in one of the most electrifying cities on the planet. And the movie delivered exactly that with a grin. And over the years, something kind of magical happened. That early criticism, it faded away. The movie didn't just survive, it leveled up. It slowly transformed into a holiday staple. Something people watch every single December without even thinking about it, like putting up lights or drinking hot chocolate. It became this comfort film, a nostalgia blast that hits every generation in a different way. The kids who saw it in theaters grew up and showed it to their own kids. And then those kids started quoting it, reenacting the traps, memorizing Kevin's lines, laughing at Marv's screams like it's brand new. It hasn't just become a classic. It's reached that sweet spot where it's both a Christmas must-watch and a cult favorite. Because it's not just the movie itself, it's the vibe. It's New York at Christmas time, glowing and huge and alive. It's that fantasy of being a kid with absolute freedom in the biggest city in the world. It's the Pigeon Lady, Duncan's toy chest, the Plaza Hotel, that insane townhouse battlefield. It's that perfect blend of heart and chaos that only Home Alone can pull off. And honestly, the more time passes, the more people appreciate it for exactly what it is. Unapologetically fun, wildly imaginative, endlessly quotable. While critics were busy analyzing it, audiences were embracing it, and the movie's legacy is the proof. Because nobody talks about those reviews anymore. They talk about the guilty pleasure of watching Marv take a brick to the face, the pure Christmas magic of Kevin standing under the Rockefeller tree, the warmth of that final moment when the chaos finally settles and the holiday spirit kicks into full gear. That's how this film shifted from the sequel critics didn't love to the movie millions refused to let go of. A film that carved out its own place in holiday history simply by being itself. Big, loud, warm, hilarious, and unforgettable. And that rise, that transformation into a yearly tradition, just pulls you deeper into the story of the movie's legacy, making you wonder how something so chaotic, so comedic, so larger than life managed to turn into one of the most beloved holiday films ever created. And somehow, the story keeps getting better. Rolling straight from that rise to legendary status, you start to see that the real magic of Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, wasn't just what wound up on screen. It was the wild, ambitious, almost rebellious process that created it. Because behind all the laughs, the traps, the Christmas lights, there was a powerhouse team determined to prove they could take the original phenomenon and push it even bigger, louder, and more spectacular. The movie brought back the same creative duo that made the first film explode into a global hit. The director, the writer, the studio, every key player who knew exactly how to tap into that perfect mix of childlike wonder and absolute cartoon chaos. The director once again took the helm with this steady, confident grip, knowing he had something special in his hands, and the writer crafted a screenplay that didn't come from a book or an adaptation or some pre-existing story. It was all original, built from the ground up as the ultimate "what if Kevin got a second round" scenario. And because the same studio that championed the first film was all in, the sequel didn't get made cautiously. It got made like a victory lap. And that's where things get really interesting, because one of the boldest swings they took was deciding to actually film in New York City during the holiday season, at a time when the city was absolutely packed, freezing, alive, and fully aware that Kevin McAllister, this tiny whirlwind of traps and brilliant chaos, was about to sprint across some of the most iconic locations on Earth. Shooting at the Plaza Hotel, filming at Rockefeller Center, blocking off sections of Central Park, capturing the real energy of Fifth Avenue decorated in lights. It wasn't just filmmaking, it was filmmaking with swagger, like they were saying. If we're gonna send Kevin to New York, we're not faking a single thing. And then there was the unique challenge of pushing everything from the first movie to the next level without losing the heart. The booby traps? They weren't rewrites, they were reinventions. The comedy? Sharper, crazier, riskier. The emotional beats? Deeper, especially with the pigeon lady and the toy store owner, characters designed to reflect Kevin's growing sense of responsibility in a bigger world. But what really sets the creation of this film apart from most sequels is that the team didn't try to replace the formula, they doubled down on it. They said, people love the heart, the humor, the danger, the innocence, the chaos. So let's keep all of that and just dial it up to 11. And it worked, because the cast returned with that same energy as if they'd never left. Macaulay Culkin came back at the height of his fame, and instead of cracking under that pressure, he delivered a performance packed with charm, mischief, and confidence. Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern came back ready to be destroyed all over again, practically inviting the pain like warriors preparing for another round. Even the family, who could have been just background noise, returned with this perfect blend of frantic comedy and genuine warmth. What's wild is how much trust existed behind the scenes. The studio trusted the director trusted the writer trusted the cast, and the cast trusted the world they'd already built. And that trust allowed them to dream way bigger than most sequels ever dare. So when you watch Home Alone 2, what you're really seeing is this rare moment in filmmaking where everyone involved said, let's not tone it down. Let's see how far we can push this thing. And they pushed it right into holiday movie royalty. That courage to expand, to escalate, to lean into the madness instead of running from it, that's what makes the production of this movie so unique. And it's why the film still feels alive decades later, like the creative spark behind it never burned out. It just keeps glowing every time someone hits play. And riding that same wave of bold choices and behind-the-scenes guts, you start to see exactly why Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, hits so hard in some areas while wobbling a bit in others. Because every sequel that tries to go bigger walks this tightrope between brilliance and excess. And this movie dances on that line in a way that's honestly part of its charm. One of its biggest strengths, maybe the biggest, is that it fully embraces the fantasy of a kid unleashed in the most iconic city in the world. And it does it with this wild, almost dreamlike confidence. New York isn't just the backdrop. It's a co-star. The glowing Christmas lights, the towering buildings, the Plaza Hotel dripping with luxury, the toy store sparkling like something straight out of a kid's imagination, all of it makes the movie feel larger than life. It takes the spirit of the first film and plugs it into a city that never sleeps. And the result is this adrenaline rush of holiday mischief that immediately sets it apart from other family adventures of the era. And Macaulay Culkin, man, he's still the spark that keeps the whole engine roaring. His delivery, his timing, his fearless little smirk. He carries the sequel with the same electricity he brought to the original, reminding everyone why he became one of the most iconic child actors of all time. The chemistry with Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern also remains unbeatable, because those two come back swinging even harder, fully embracing the slapstick insanity like they're in some kind of Looney Tunes fever dream brought to life. And let's be honest, nobody gets destroyed on camera with more commitment than those guys. The tone, the comedy, the decorations, the heartwarming side stories, all of that adds layers that so many holiday films try to capture but never quite reach. The scenes with the pigeon lady add emotional depth. The toy store plot brings warmth, and the soundtrack still wraps everything in that magical holiday glow. But with all that said, the movie isn't bulletproof, and acknowledging its weaknesses actually helps explain why it has such a fascinating reputation. Probably the biggest criticism people throw at it is that it mirrors the first movie almost too closely. Lost kid, big city, clueless adults, traps, chaos, redemption. Some viewers feel like it's more of a remix than a reinvention. And the traps, while hilarious, are pushed to this cartoonishly violent extreme where you almost wonder how Harry and Marv are alive. But honestly, that over-the-top absurdity is also exactly why so many fans adore it. Weakness or strength? Depends who you ask. Another thing that sometimes gets picked apart is the believability factor. Kevin's ability to navigate New York, book luxury hotels, outsmart adults, and handle thousands of dollars like he's running Wall Street. That's where the story drifts deep into fantasy territory. But again, fantasy is the point. It's Christmas wish fulfillment, not a tutorial on responsible parenting. And compared to similar family comedies, Home Alone 2 stands out because it commits fully, unapologetically to being big. Bigger setting, bigger stakes, bigger laughs. It isn't trying to be grounded, it's trying to give you an experience. Most sequels play it safe. This one says, nah, let's run wild. Where it falls short for some is exactly where it shines for others. And that's what makes it such a fascinating film. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. It polishes it, paints it gold, straps fireworks to it, and rolls it down Fifth Avenue on Christmas Eve. And that's why the movie continues to split critics but unite fans. It might not be perfect, but it's unforgettable. It might repeat beats from the original, but it does them with so much style, so much energy, and so much heart that you can't help but get swept up in the ride. And maybe that's the real magic of it. Its strengths and weaknesses blend together into this wonderfully chaotic holiday experience that sticks with you long after the credits roll, carving out its own spot in movie history, not by being flawless, but by being fearless, rolling straight out of everything we just unpacked, the strengths, the wild energy, the unapologetic chaos. You start to appreciate the magic even more when you dive back into the heart of it all, the story itself, the engine that makes Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, roar the way it does. Because this plot isn't just a setup for laughs, it's this roller coaster chain reaction where one tiny mistake sends an entire family spiraling into holiday madness, and the way it all unfolds feels like destiny messing with the McAllisters just for fun. So picture this. After the absolute mayhem of the first movie, you'd think the family would double-check every alarm clock, every suitcase, every head count, but nope. Chaos follows them like a curse. They're heading to Florida for Christmas, and Kevin, already fed up with the non-stop family bickering, gets separated at the airport in the most 90s way possible. He chases a guy who looks like his dad, turns the wrong way, and boom, he's on a plane to New York City, while the rest of the McAllisters are sweating it out on a flight to Miami, clueless that they've once again misplaced their smallest disaster magnet. And this is where the story explodes into that fantasy everybody secretly dreamed of as a kid. Kevin lands in New York with his dad's credit card, his Talkboy recorder, and a mind full of mischief. He checks into the Plaza Hotel like he owns the place, smooth talks the staff, enjoys room service like royalty, and roams through Manhattan like it's his personal playground. And just when it feels like he's living the ultimate holiday adventure, he runs smack into his old enemies, the Wet Bandits, now rebranded as the Sticky Bandits, trying to pull off a Christmas Eve robbery at the magical toy store Duncan's Toy Chest. Suddenly, the story shifts gears from light-hearted fun to this clever little cat-and-mouse showdown because Kevin can't just walk away. He decides he's going to stop them. With the same genius-level trap-setting skills he used back home, he transforms his uncle's abandoned New York townhouse into a full-blown war zone, a booby-trapped nightmare where Harry and Marv get wrecked so brutally it's honestly miraculous they stand up again. But underneath all the slapstick chaos, there's this thread of heart that holds everything together. The lonely pigeon lady who becomes Kevin's surprising friend, the toy store owner whose kindness inspires Kevin to fight back. The moment Kevin realizes that even with all the freedom and fun in the world, what he actually wants is to be back with his family. And by the time the movie hits its emotional peak, Kevin staring up at the giant Rockefeller Center tree, wishing desperately to see his mom, you're reminded that this whole wild journey is ultimately about connection, forgiveness, and that messy, beautiful bond families never seem to get right until they almost lose it. And when his mom finally finds him under that glowing tree in the middle of New York, the story clicks into place with this burst of warmth that hits just as hard now as it did in 1992. That's what makes the plot so iconic. It's outrageous, it's heartfelt, it's funny, it's cinematic, and it blends all those wild elements into a holiday adventure that refuses to be forgotten. It's a story of a kid lost in the biggest city in the world who somehow manages to save Christmas, defeat two criminals, make unlikely friends, and still be home, well, almost home, before the holiday ends. And that's the magic of Home Alone 2. The reason people keep coming back every December, craving that rush of nostalgia, chaos, and Christmas spirit that only Kevin McAllister can deliver. And sliding right from the heartbeat of that wild New York adventure, you can't help but look at who actually brings this whole chaotic, emotional, hilarious story to life. Because the cast of Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, isn't just a list of names, it's the engine that makes every scene hit the way it does, every joke land, every emotional moment stick, and every trap feel like a small explosion of pure cinematic madness. At the center of everything, of course, is Macaulay Culkin as Kevin McAllister. And it's impossible to overstate how much he carries this movie on his shoulders with that perfect blend of innocence, confidence, and tiny criminal mastermind energy. He's got that spark that makes Kevin believable, lovable, and just dangerous enough that you're rooting for him while also low-key fearing for anyone who crosses his path. Culkin's timing, his expressions, his swagger, they all turn Kevin from just another kid protagonist into an absolute icon. Right behind him, stumbling, limping, screaming, and surviving the impossible, are Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern as Harry and Marv, the two most persistent, unlucky, pain-absorbing criminals to ever grace a screen. Pesci plays Harry with this grumpy bulldog intensity, always trying to act like the brains of the duo, only to get outsmarted by an 8-year-old again and again. Daniel Stern is pure comedy gold. Every yell, every fall, every moment of shock becomes 10 times funnier because of the way he throws his entire soul into it. The chemistry between these two is so tight and so chaotic that even when they're getting destroyed by Kevin's traps, you can't help but laugh like you're witnessing slapstick art. But the magic doesn't stop there. Catherine O'Hara brings this warm, frantic, heartbroken energy as Kate McAllister, Kevin's mom, always desperate to find her son, always 2 steps behind him, but always fueled by that fierce motherly determination that gives the story its emotional spine. John Hurd returns as the more laid-back dad, trying to calm the storm while somehow not noticing his wallet disappearing into Kevin's hands at exactly the wrong moment. Then you've got the Plaza Hotel Dream Team, led by Tim Curry as the smirking, suspicious concierge. Curry plays him with the perfect mix of cartoon villain and prissy hotel manager, constantly hovering around Kevin like he's trying to bust a world-class spy instead of a kid with a credit card. Rob Schneider pops in as the bellhop with that goofy, slightly desperate charm, cracking sly jokes while angling for tips, adding this extra layer of comedy to Kevin's life of luxury. And then there's Brenda Fricker as the Pigeon Lady, one of the movie's most unexpected, emotional anchors. She doesn't need big speeches or flashy scenes. Her quiet, lonely presence wrapped in feathers and heartbreak balances the chaos with depth. Her friendship with Kevin is the soul of the film's softer moments, grounding the story every time things get a little too explosive or insane. You've also got the warm, gentle presence of the toy store owner, Mr. Duncan, who brings that pure Christmas magic energy the movie needs to deliver its heartwarming message. Even the small roles hit. Buzz being the eternal nightmare older brother, Uncle Frank being that one relative you pray not to sit near at dinner, and the rest of the McAllister crew running around in confused panic like a tornado made of sweaters and luggage. Each character brings a different flavor, a different beat, a different push to Kevin's journey, and the cast pours so much personality into their roles that the film feels alive, not just staged, not just written, but genuinely breathing with holiday chaos and charm. And that's what makes this lineup unforgettable. It isn't just star power, it's chemistry, timing, humor, and heart, all colliding on screen in a way that feels both ridiculous and real at the same time. These characters, portrayed by actors who gave their absolute all, even in the middle of slapstick war zones, turned Home Alone 2 into the kind of film people revisit every year like catching up with old friends, each performance etched into that holiday tradition forever. And rolling right out of those unforgettable characters, the energy of the story naturally flows into the deeper layers tucked underneath all the comedy, chaos, and Christmas sparkle, because Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, isn't just a wild ride through Manhattan with flying bricks, exploding sinks, and a kid outsmarting two grown men again. It actually carries a whole load of themes and messages that hit way harder than people expect from a slapstick holiday movie. The film hides its heart in plain sight, and once you start peeling back the noise, you realize the movie's actually saying something pretty meaningful about loneliness, courage, forgiveness, generosity, and what it really means to be part of a family. One of the strongest themes is the idea of being lost, not just physically, like Kevin wandering through New York or his mom frantically searching city to city, but emotionally. Kevin starts the movie annoyed, feeling misunderstood, pushed around, unseen in his giant family, and deep down he's craving independence, but also love. The pigeon lady mirrors him like a quiet echo, someone who got hurt, shut down, and built walls around her heart because trusting people doesn't always end well. Their connection becomes this unexpected anchor in the film, showing that sometimes the people who look the most different or the most distant are the ones who understand us the best. Through her, the movie pushes this message that it's never too late to let someone back into your life, to open up again, to trust, even when it's scary. And layered on top of that is the movie's whole take on bravery, which isn't about setting traps or fighting criminals. It's about choosing kindness, even when the world gives you reasons not to. Kevin could have ignored the toy store robbery. He could have kept living the dream in the plaza and let someone else handle it. But he doesn't. He chooses to step up to protect something pure and joyful, even when it means risking his neck and facing down two crooks who absolutely want revenge. That's the kind of quiet moral the movie sneaks in. Courage comes from compassion, not ego. Another big message the film hammers home, without ever preaching, is the importance of generosity. Mr. Duncan's toy store, the turtle dove's ornament, Kevin donating to the children's hospital. These moments remind us that Christmas isn't about fancy hotels, room service mountains, or expensive decorations. It's about giving something meaningful to someone who needs it. It's about seeing people, not just walking past them. And of course, there's the theme that holds the whole movie together. Family. Messy, loud, chaotic, imperfect family. Kevin starts off wanting space, wanting quiet, wanting to get away from the noise and arguments, But when he actually gets that freedom, total independence in the biggest city in the world, he realizes it's not the dream he thought it was. Without the craziness, without the arguments, without the warmth, it all feels empty. The movie shows that growing up doesn't mean running away. It means understanding the value of the people in your life, appreciating what you have, and learning how to forgive. Not because the other person is perfect, but because love is bigger than mistakes. Even Kate's relentless search for him reinforces that theme. She doesn't sleep, she doesn't wait, she doesn't quit. She hunts down her kid through airports, police stations, city streets, everywhere, proving that love pushes people past fear every single time. And layered underneath all of it is this message about redemption. The wet bandits are never going to change, sure, but the pigeon lady, Kevin's own growth, the way the family comes back together, those moments quietly whisper that it's never too late to try again. It's never too late to be better. It's never too late to fix what's broken. And that's the beauty of this movie. Behind every laugh, every trap, every dramatic sprint through New York, there's this warm, beating heart reminding viewers that kindness matters, family matters, courage matters, and no one, no matter how small, how hurt, or how lost, is ever truly alone. What's really wild is that once you start digging into the themes beneath all that holiday chaos, you begin to see how every one of those ideas, loneliness, courage, forgiveness, generosity, ends up shaping the relationships between the characters in a way that feels way deeper than you expect from a movie famous for bricks dropping on crooks' heads. And as the story unfolds, those relationships aren't just moving pieces on a plot board. They evolve, twist, collide, and soften in a way that gives the whole adventure its emotional punch. Kevin's relationship with his family is the heartbeat of that change, because he starts off frustrated, feeling overlooked and misunderstood, convinced that none of them truly get him. But being alone in the biggest, busiest city in America forces him to confront what alone really means. And the beauty of it is how the movie lets that realization grow quietly in the background, scene by scene, until suddenly Kevin isn't the kid who wishes his family would disappear. He's the kid who would give anything to hear their noise again. Meanwhile, Kate's side of the relationship goes from exasperation to this fierce, tunnel vision determination, and every mile she travels, every person she talks to, every door she bangs on just reinforces how deeply she loves her son. By the time they finally reunite in front of the Rockefeller Center tree, every cold night, every frantic moment, every ounce of fear she carried melts into this massive wave of relief. And you can feel the change radiating off both of them. Their bond becomes stronger not because they tried to fix things, but because circumstances force them to see what they mean to each other. Then you've got Kevin and the pigeon lady, and their relationship is like the emotional soul of the movie. They start off as strangers. She's quiet, withdrawn, closed off, like someone who drifted into the shadows because life tossed her around one too many times. But Kevin doesn't just see the surface. He listens, he asks, he cares, and slowly this cold, guarded character begins to thaw. Their conversations aren't just small talk. They're about fear, trust, healing, and learning to let people in again. And the shift in their bond becomes this symbol of how compassion can rebuild someone piece by piece. Kevin gives her the turtle dove ornament, promising that as long as they each have one, they'll always be friends. And that tiny gesture ends up meaning more than all the comedy in the movie. On the other side of the emotional spectrum, Kevin's relationship with Harry and Marv evolves too, but in the funniest, most chaotic way possible. At first, they're just two crooks who can't believe their terrible luck. Seeing the same kid they swore revenge on accidentally waltz right into their path in New York City. But the more Kevin outsmarts them, the more their dynamic shifts into this over-the-top rivalry where they're not just trying to rob a toy store, they're mission-focused on catching Kevin. And every trap, every fall, every explosion pushes that relationship deeper into cartoonish insanity, turning them into these almost myth-level foes who exist purely to get wrecked by a kid with too much creativity and too much free time. Their relationship, if you can call it that, is a running reminder of how determination can survive even the worst pain imaginable. And these guys take pain. And then you got Kevin's dynamic with the adults around him, the Plaza Hotel staff, Mr. Duncan, random New Yorkers, each interaction shaping how he navigates the world. At first, the adults underestimate him or try to control him, but the longer Kevin operates on his own, the more he earns respect, trust, and in some cases, even admiration. It's this subtle thread showing how confidence and kindness can shift how people treat you. All these evolving relationships weave together to create this bigger message that people grow when they collide with each other, when they challenge each other, when they care even when it's messy or inconvenient. And by the time the credits roll, Kevin isn't just the kid who pulled off the most legendary weekend in New York. He's someone who understands his family better, values connection more deeply, trusts more openly, and sees the world through a lens softened by compassion and sharpened by experience. The relationships don't just change the characters, they transform the story into something that sticks with you long after the last trap is sprung and the snow starts to settle. And flowing right out of the way those relationships shift and sharpen through the chaos of New York, you start to notice that the real magic underneath the snow and slapstick is how the movie handles Kevin's growth, because his character development isn't loud or preachy. It's woven into every choice he makes, every moment he hesitates, every time he steps up with that mix of kid-like wonder and surprising emotional depth. What makes him so compelling is that he's not written as some flawless hero. He's a kid who messes up, gets scared, gets stubborn, and still somehow finds a way to rise to every insane situation the universe throws at him. Kevin's arc in this sequel builds on everything the first film set up, but it pushes him into new territory. In the beginning, he's carried by the same confident energy, sharp, clever, too quick for his own good. And he still has that little spark of mischief, that attitude that makes him both relatable and hilarious. But once he finds himself in New York, that confidence gets tested in ways he didn't expect, because suddenly he's not just defending his home, he's navigating a massive city alone, making real plans, dealing with real consequences, and trying to decide who he wants to be when no one is watching. And the crazy part is how naturally the film lets that growth happen. It doesn't stop the story to announce, hey, here's a character moment. Instead, Kevin matures through action, through helping the pigeon lady face her own fears, through choosing to protect a toy store for kids he'll never meet, through that quiet realization that independence feels cool until loneliness sneaks in and catches you off guard. He becomes compelling because he carries that contradiction. He wants adventure, but he also wants connection. He loves the thrill, but he craves belonging. He's independent, but not heartless. And the movie gives him room to explore both sides without ever making him feel unrealistic. He's smart, but he's still a kid. He's brave, but he still panics. He has a good heart, but he sometimes speaks before thinking. That balance is what keeps him grounded and what makes every decision feel earned instead of convenient. When he chooses to help the pigeon lady, it's not just a random moment of kindness. It's the result of everything he's learned about compassion, fear, and second chances. When he goes toe-to-toe with Harry and Marv again, it's not just about revenge. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves, stepping into responsibility without even realizing he's doing it. Even his humor is part of his development. It's how he keeps himself going, how he fights fear, how he reminds the audience that this whole journey is happening through the eyes of a kid who refuses to be small. And what's brilliant is that the film lets us see all this growth without stripping away the personality that made Kevin iconic in the first place. He's still witty, still unpredictable, still mischievous enough to build traps that would take down a small army. But now that chaos is fueled by purpose, not petty annoyance, that shift from rebellion to responsibility, from running away to stepping up, turns Kevin into a protagonist you can't help but root for, not just because he's funny or clever, but because you can feel him learning, stretching, becoming someone a little wiser than he was the day before. That's what makes him compelling. He's a kid who grows without losing what makes him him. And watching that evolution unfold across the insanity of New York City gives the whole film a deeper emotional backbone, one that sneaks up on you even as you're laughing at bricks, blowtorches, and electrocutions that absolutely should have taken Harry and Marv out 50 times over. It's character development wrapped in comedy, heart disguised as holiday chaos, and it's exactly why Kevin remains one of the most unforgettable protagonists in any family adventure film. Rolling straight out of Kevin's growth and the way the movie shapes him through every choice he makes, the visual identity of Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, steps in like its own character, wrapping everything in this slick, larger-than-life Christmas-time energy that feels both magical and grounded, almost like the city itself is guiding Kevin through this wild adventure. The film doesn't rely on animation, of course, but the way it's shot gives it this almost cartoon-like exaggeration at all the right moments. Those big, wide reaction shots, the dramatic zoom-ins when Harry and Marv realize they've been outsmarted yet again, the perfectly timed slowdowns right before a trap hits. It's that playful, heightened visual rhythm that makes every gag land harder, almost like the cinematography is winking at the audience saying, "Yeah, you know what's coming." And then suddenly it flips, shifting into warm, glowing Christmas movie beauty whenever Kevin steps into the more emotional parts of the story. You get those sweeping shots of New York dressed in lights, the kind of images that make the whole city feel like a giant holiday postcard. Central Park becomes this mysterious, magical place instead of a cold stretch of trees. Duncan's toy chest looks like every kid's dream factory lit with 1,000 twinkling ornaments. And the Plaza Hotel practically sparkles with luxury, framed in a way that makes every viewer, child or adult, wish they could spend just one night there. The cinematography knows exactly when to go big and when to get intimate. In the action scenes, the camera moves with this fast, mischievous energy, always giving Kevin the upper hand, following him as he darts through staircases and alleyways like he's the hero of his own comic strip. But then you hit scenes like the ones with the pigeon lady, where everything slows down, the lighting softens, the city feels quieter, the shots linger just a little longer, so you really feel Kevin opening up, thinking things through, letting his guard down. It's subtle, but it's powerful. It tells you that beneath all the explosions and paint cans and slapstick chaos, the movie actually cares about these moments of connection. And you can't ignore how bold the movie is in embracing the scale of New York. The first film was all about the house, tight spaces, controlled lighting, a cozy environment. But in the sequel, they go big, huge cityscapes, wide pans from the tops of skyscrapers, tracking shots down crowded sidewalks that make you feel the buzz of Christmas tourism. The movie turns the city into this massive playground for Kevin, but it also uses that scale to show how small he is in the wider world, how much courage it takes for a kid to navigate a place like this. And then there's the way the cinematography makes the traps feel epic. Every shot is designed to show the impact, the absurd height of danger, the absolute insanity of what Harry and Marv willingly walk into. The camera work leans into exaggeration because that exaggeration is the comedy. The angles are wide because you need to see every brick flying, every slip, every scream. It's practically choreographed like a ballet of destruction, and the camera captures it with absolute precision. But the real charm is how all these elements blend into one continuous visual rhythm. Warm, then wild, then heartfelt, then hilarious. There's no awkward break between tones because the film knows exactly what it is. A holiday adventure that's larger than life without losing its emotional center. It's like the cinematography tells the story with the same voice Kevin has, playful, fearless, curious, and always ready for whatever the next corner of the city might bring. And that's why the visuals stick with people, not because they're flashy for the sake of it, but because they make you feel like you're right there with Kevin, exploring New York, getting lost, getting found again, and seeing the holiday season through the eyes of a kid who's growing up one mistake and one victory at a time. The movie looks exactly the way the story feels, big, bright, wild, and somehow warm every time it counts. And flowing right out of that larger-than-life visual energy, the soundtrack steps in like the heartbeat of the entire film, carrying that same mix of mischief, wonder, and pure Christmas magic. And it's wild how much it shapes the vibe without you even noticing you're being pulled along by it. The music, composed by none other than John Williams, doesn't just sit in the background. It drives the emotional tone of every scene, almost like it knows exactly what Kevin's thinking before he even says a word. And suddenly, you feel it too. Williams brings back those iconic melodies from the first film, the ones that feel like childhood bottled into a few notes, but he expands the whole thing into something even grander, fitting the massive scale of New York City and turning the sequel into this sweeping holiday adventure that feels bigger, brighter, and more dramatic without losing the heart that made the first movie timeless. Every time the score kicks in, it's like the city itself wakes up. Those soaring orchestral sections feel like snow falling across skyscrapers, toy stores glowing like treasure, and the Plaza Hotel sparkling like a diamond right in the middle of Manhattan. And then there's that mischievous, playful theme that dances around Kevin whenever he's planning something. You hear those light, fast strings and instantly know he's up to something, and you can't help but smile because the music makes you feel like you're in on the joke. But Williams doesn't stop at the fun stuff. He hits the emotional beats with this insane precision. When Kevin meets the pigeon lady, the score softens into something fragile, almost trembling, like it's afraid to speak too loudly in that quiet moment of trust between two lonely souls. The music wraps those scenes in this warmth that makes the whole city feel less cold, less towering, and suddenly you understand Kevin's growth on a deeper level, because the soundtrack makes the moment feel sacred. Even the big action sequences with all their crazy traps and slapstick destruction have this operatic flair thanks to the score. Williams doesn't treat them like goofy cartoon violence. He scores them like a symphony of chaos, turning every slip, fall, scream, and explosion into this rhythmic, theatrical roller coaster that feels way more epic than it has any right to be. It's like he said, if we're going big, we're going all the way big. And the soundtrack follows through with full throttle intensity. And let's not forget the classic Christmas vibes woven through the whole movie. Choirs, bells, warm harmonies, those nostalgic winter melodies that make you feel like you're walking through a Christmas market, even if you're watching the movie in July. Those songs anchor the whole story in that holiday spirit, reminding you that underneath the traps and the chaos and the comedy, this is still a story about family, forgiveness, kindness, and the magic of the season. What's crazy is how the music supports Kevin as a character. When he's bold, the soundtrack grows confident and adventurous. When he's scared, it becomes small and trembling. When he's discovering something new, it swells with wonder. It's like the score is Kevin's emotional translator, letting the audience feel the world through his eyes even when he's silent. And that's why it works. It's not just background noise. It's not just a Christmas playlist. It's the emotional glue of the entire movie. Without that score, New York wouldn't feel as magical. The reunion at the end wouldn't feel as heartwarming, and Kevin's whole adventure wouldn't hit nearly as hard. The music makes the movie breathe. It makes it shine. It makes it timeless. And that's the power of a John Williams soundtrack. It doesn't just support the story, it elevates it into something unforgettable, something that sticks with you long after the final snowflake falls in that last scene. And riding that wave of musical magic straight into the film's legacy, you start to realize something pretty wild. Even though Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, dropped into theaters with the weight of sky-high expectations after the monster success of the first movie, the way critics and audiences responded to it couldn't have been more different, almost like two completely separate conversations happening at the same time. Critics back in '92 were kind of cold on it. They said it was too similar to the first one, too over the top, too unrealistic. Like Kevin surviving half of those traps should have put him in the Guinness Book of World Records for Kid with 9 Lives. But while the critics were nitpicking, audiences were out there packing theaters, laughing, cheering, and walking out with that warm holiday glow that only a perfectly chaotic Christmas adventure can give you. It's almost funny looking back, because what the critics saw as recycled, regular people saw as comforting and exactly what we wanted. And that's where the movie really started building its reputation. Not from its reviews, but from the way families embraced it year after year, turning it into a holiday tradition, the same way you pull out your favorite ornaments every December. And as time rolled on, the film didn't fade. It grew into this unstoppable holiday classic that plays on TV networks every single Christmas season like clockwork, grew into that movie people quote without even realizing it, grew into that film kids watch, then grow up, then show their own kids, because it still hits the same way it did back in the early '90s. It's not just nostalgia either. The movie genuinely has that larger-than-life energy that grabs you, that mix of slapstick insanity, heartwarming moments, and pure Christmas atmosphere that makes you want to crawl inside the screen and wander through that snow-covered New York yourself. And let's be real, Kevin running wild in the Plaza Hotel, the talk boy, the giant toy store, the pigeon lady, Harry and Marv getting absolutely obliterated by traps so brutal they've practically become memes. Those things have carved out their place in pop culture in a way critics never could have predicted. Over time, the movie basically shrugged off its lukewarm reviews and built this cult favorite status that's stronger than ever now, especially with younger generations who just see it as the ultimate holiday adventure. Because for them, and honestly for most of us, Home Alone 2 isn't something you analyze. It's something you feel. It's that movie you throw on while decorating the tree, or while wrapping gifts, or when you want to laugh at Harry and Marv getting destroyed by a kid smarter than every adult in the film. It's become part of the fabric of modern Christmas the way certain songs or traditions are. And that right there is the magic. Critics may have seen a flawed sequel, but audiences saw a memory maker, a comfort watch, a staple. And that's why today, decades later, it stands not just as a holiday classic, but as one of those rare films where the people, not the reviewers, decided its fate. And they decided it belongs right at the top of the Christmas Hall of Fame, where it's stayed ever since, untouched, unbothered, and permanently iconic. And rolling right out of that whole conversation about how the audience, not the critics, crowned this movie a holiday legend, it's impossible not to zoom in on why the film feels so big, so alive, so cinematic. And that takes us straight into the production itself, because the behind-the-scenes story of Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, is almost as bold and ambitious as Kevin's actual adventure. This wasn't some small, safe sequel tossed together to make easy money. This was a full-scale, go big or go home kind of production, led by the same powerhouse duo that made the first film explode, writer John Hughes and director Chris Columbus. These two were like the heavyweight champions of early 90s family cinema. And when they decided to bring Kevin McAllister back, They didn't want to copy-paste the original. They wanted to take everything people loved and turn the dial up to 11. And that's exactly what they did. Instead of keeping Kevin in the suburbs, they threw him into the most iconic, chaotic, larger-than-life city they could find. New York wasn't just a backdrop. It was practically a character, and shooting there wasn't easy. They filmed in real locations that would normally be off-limits. The Plaza Hotel, Central Park, Rockefeller Center, the real Duncan's toy chest inspiration spots, even shutting down parts of the city in the middle of the holiday season, which is the busiest time of the year. The studio behind it all, 20th Century Fox, basically said, if we're doing this, we're not doing it halfway. And they backed the movie with a massive budget that let the production team build insanely detailed sets, like Uncle Rob's renovated-in-progress townhouse, which became the battleground of some of the most over-the-top trap sequences ever filmed. And here's something a lot of people don't know. Even though the townhouse looks like a real New York building, much of that interior wasn't filmed on location. It was constructed on sound stages, perfectly designed to survive and visually showcase the mayhem Chris Columbus wanted Harry and Marv to be put through. The crew had to build walls that could collapse safely, floors that could break without actually injuring the actors, prop versions of bricks, paint cans, wrenches, and pipes that looked terrifying on camera but wouldn't send anyone to the hospital. And through all this, the tone, the comedy, the emotional beats, they all came straight from John Hughes' writing style. The man had this almost magical ability to blend heart and humor, to take these wild, exaggerated setups and lace them with real emotional warmth. He understood families, he understood childhood, and he understood that a good Christmas movie isn't just about the jokes. It's about leaving the audience with something they can feel. What's also pretty unique is how the production embraced practical effects over CGI. In 1992, you didn't have digital trickery to fake the stunts. You had to do them. So every slip, every fall, every explosion of plaster dust, those were real stunt performers taking real hits, choreographed down to the millisecond to make the chaos look cartoonish but keep everyone safe. Another standout detail is how the talk boy became an iconic part of the movie's identity. Originally, it wasn't a real product. It was a prop created for the film. But when kids saw it on screen, they lost their minds.